Even though I grew up in a Christian home, I reached a point in my life where I felt spiritually stagnant. I really wanted to see a change in my life, especially in my relationship with the Lord, and that is when He showed me His grace and mercy by leading me back to Him in the most lovely way possible. He gave my life a complete turn, and I have decided to give Him a heart willing to be shaped by His purposes. Crew was God's answer to my prayers. I met this beautiful community in 2019 when I traveled to Orlando to participate in a Disney program with my university. It all started when I met a Christian friend at work and he invited me to a Crew Bible study there. From that time, I got involved in more activities. Crew has been a blessing in my life. Once coming back to Peru, someone serving with Crew here shared a key volunteer challenge with me.
It was a good tool that allowed me to identify what the current situation was at my university and how I'd like the future to look, applying the command of the Great Commission. I was able to identify believer and non-believer friends in order to share the gospel in a more intentional way. Since I met Crew, I could see the love and passion of the community to make the gospel known. I met people who impacted my relationship with Christ and at the same time helped me become more aware of the great spiritual need that was around me. I learned to be more intentional in my time with people. I learned to use different tools that help me share the gospel in a more effective way. I also developed my leadership and discovered my passion to serve and teach more people. The path has not been easy, but I do not want to resist being used by God. It is amazing to see the ways in which God works when we have a willing heart, and nothing happens by chance. I know that He put the right people in my path to give me the opportunity to share His love and forgiveness. For example, Sylvia. I met her in college and we traveled to Orlando together. We participated in a Crew retreat where we had a great time in community. This motivated her to continue getting involved in more activities. Once we returned to Peru, we began with Bible studies and intentional conversations until God captured her heart and she received Christ. Now she is very excited about reading her Bible and wanting to know God in a deeper way.
Yo le agradezco a Dios grandemente por la vida de cada una de mis amigas, por tocar sus corazones y porque ahora tengo el privilegio de poder llamarlas mis hermanas en Cristo.
Despite the difficult context we are living in due to the pandemic, I've been able to see God's love and grace in every moment. This change to a virtual reality allowed me to reach more people and do different activities in community. It is a privilege to share the gospel and see how God works in the lives of people when they decide to surrender themselves to Him. I am very grateful to God for how He has been working in me since I decided to give my life to Him. It is my desire that He can continue to use me for His purposes and allow me to reach more students so that they can experience His love, His forgiveness, and also see that God is the only one who can transform their lives so that they can be a blessing and impact the lives of more people.
I just love that story of Doris and her passion and her maturity, and it just represents what God is doing all over the world, especially in Peru. I just got so excited. And that story is the perfect way to begin night 2 of our Crew Digital Summit. I'm Heather Holleman, and I am on staff with Crew with Faculty Commons, which is the part of Crew that serves graduate students and professors. And I'm here in my home at Penn State, where I also teach advanced writing for the English department. And I'm just thrilled to be your host this evening. Now, if you were here last night, thanks for returning. But if you're just tuning in, welcome, and make sure you check out episode 1 after this. Both nights, we just focus on how God is moving all over the world and how Crew is refining and expanding its mission. And you'll learn how you can join in to that movement. So this last part is so important because we'd really love for you to partner with us. It really makes me excited to invite you to participate in this great work that the Lord is doing to seek and save the lost. If God is calling you or you feel a tug on your heart, or if anything's happened that has really just led you this evening, please check out the links below. We have a ton of resources and ways for you to get involved. So our first speaker this evening is Bob Francis. He's the Executive Director of Development for Crew, and he's going to spotlight Crew's expansion plan. But before he delivers his message, we have part 2 of Understanding Today's Student Digital Series. Take a look.
I would say if I was speaking to a crowd of like older generations with probably my parents' age,
we probably have a hard time expressing our sort of gratitude and thanks towards the older generation.
That we're stronger and smarter than we look.
We are not gonna stop just because we have some roadblock in our way. Like, we'll find a way around it.
Probably that we don't always want to answer questions about technology and like how to navigate an app or a phone.
We are, we're the next generation. We are the next you.
We got a lot of flaws, but we got a lot of potential too.
Just being more open-minded when it comes to things about like sexuality, gender identification, mental health.
I would want them to know that we're scared and we have no idea what's going on.
We might have like phones and technology, but we don't really know what we're doing either.
Just be there. Just be there for us, because we need help. We need lots of help.
We're not a bunch of just spoiled little turds, I promise.
I know that personally, I did Habitat for Humanity for a long time, and that was just my way of kind of giving back and doing something.
For me, that looks like, when I go on a hike, I bring a garbage bag and just clean up trash that I see along the way.
We're trying to kind of change the narrative and not get people to realize that Black lives do matter.
I've started working with the Homeless Alliance in OKC with my sorority, and we're going to have an event with them this coming month.
Some people are really passionate about advocating and being an ally for the queer community.
Right now, we're really trying to make the community that we're in aware of Stop Asian Hate, because that's very prevalent right now.
Quite frankly, I don't like where we're going because I don't think my generation has proven that they have what it takes to fix all the problems that we're going to be expected to fix.
Religion is so personal to the point that I can't even use positive examples to talk about it.
I was a Muslim. I've left Islam for now about 2 years.
I didn't grow up under any specific religion at all. My parents kind of left it to me to decide.
So I think it's still important to me that I keep my faith up, but for a lot of my peers, it's hard when the scientific and the spiritual world meet.
But I've went back and forth between Catholic, atheist, Catholic again, and now I would currently identify as an atheist.
So I grew up as a Hindu, and that's what my family believes in and I believe in.
Too, I didn't grow up religious either, but being in college has definitely opened me up to those who have.
I'm not too much of a religious person, even though I've grown up Buddhist.
I myself am not very religious, but I feel like that's kind of a reflection of my parents.
I grew up in the church, but wouldn't consider myself a Christian right now.
I grew up in a Christian home, so I'd probably say that that's still kind of carried on with me throughout college. I still believe the things I believe.
I personally haven't been to synagogue in over 7-8 years.
There's most times when I don't think about spirituality or religion for a really long time.
I feel like I've strayed a bit away from the organized Christianity that I used to be in.
I went to church, but that was really it. It was my parents, bringing me along. It wasn't my own action. So
I was raised Buddhist, loosely Buddhist, and I don't practice now.
When I entered college, I wasn't a covered woman. I became covered as I progressed into college.
I didn't grow up in a religious household anyways. My mom identifies as a deist. My stepdad was an atheist. I identify as an agnostic. So I wouldn't say faith itself plays a huge role in my life.
Since being in college, especially not on a religious campus, I don't really have friends that practice religion, and so it has gone from a pretty big part of my life to almost none at all.
Basically, you don't need to believe in God. You don't need to believe in Allah. You don't need to believe any type of religion. It's totally your choice.
Student life can end up being the best of times or the most difficult of times. And that takes us to Mia. If you open your book, you'll see her story right on the inside front cover. Mia, as you read this story, if you haven't already, was in despair. She was actually considering taking her own life. She was having academic problems, she was having health problems, and a relationship that meant a great deal to her had just fallen apart. And all of these things happened almost at the same time and just converged on her. Maybe you felt that way in your life. It's not any one particular thing that's weighing you down, but generally everything that's just hit all at once. That was Mia. That was how she was feeling. The night that she was actually planning on following through and taking her life, a friend called and said, "Hey, Mia, why don't you come with me to a crew meeting?" So Mia said, "Okay." And she went there and she discovered a caring community of people that loved unconditionally. She listened to a message, she was involved, and she started entering into conversations. And then someone cared enough to open up that little booklet and share the gospel with her, and Mia gave her life to Christ. And she would never be the same after making that decision. As we've heard so many times already in our gathering, is God changes lives. Mia got involved in follow-up. She loves the scriptures. She started reading the Bible regularly. She learned how to share her faith. Soon she was a leader in the movement. God began to use her to influence other people. So the one who was rescued became now the one who was throwing the lifeline out to others that also needed to be rescued. That's often how it happens. When your life has been impacted by Christ, you can't help but want to tell other people. So she became a leader. This year, she'll be part-time student staff in her senior year. And she's moved from a life filled with despair, considering suicide, to a whole new life. Her life was changed now, but it's changed forever, for eternity. Mia is a great story because it's an example of our strategy. You've already heard about this. Our strategy is simple. It's win, build, and send. Win has to do with sharing the gospel with people and winning them into a relationship with Christ. That word win suggests there's a battle, and there is a battle. There's a battle for the souls of men and women. And when we share Christ and they place their faith in Him as their eyes are opened by God's working in their life, they've been won into His kingdom and become one of His to be used to do the same thing in the lives of other people. And that's where build comes along. Build is bringing that person into a process of growth. And then there's the send component, where a person, once they've been won and built, they now do the same in others. And so it's a process. It's spiritual multiplication. It's how the gospel moves. It's viral. It's how we came to Christ. Somebody brought the gospel to us. Somebody cared enough. It might have been your mom or your dad or your brother or your sister or a friend or someone you hardly knew. But somebody did that in your life as they did for me. And we're here, standing here today, because they've done that. And so that's our strategy. Win, build, send. We call it our DNA. It's what we do. Mia is also a part of Generation Z. We learned about Generation Z last night. Some of you participated in the seminar this morning where Tim discussed that further. And we don't hardly need to be reminded that today's student is in peril. They're depressed, they're lonely. More of them are to declare that they're atheists than any generation before them, at least in the United States. 2 times more likely than previous generations. But they're open to the gospel. This last academic year, 68 million people heard the gospel through our ministry. Of those 68 million, 934,000 of them placed their faith in Christ. There's about 25,000 students engaged in sharing their faith, and we're part of that, on 2,800 ministries in the U.S. and around the world. And another big part of that was a digital strategy called everystudent.com. Those 68 million, gospel presentations and near million decisions were largely as a result of everystudent.com. It's been translated into 45 languages, and it's present all around the world. So if you go onto your computer and Google, is there a God? Can I know God? Who is God? Anything like that. And most likely what's going to come up on the top of the list is everystudent.com. It's targeted at students, but a lot of people visit it. So even all of these decisions that we've seen and exposures to the gospel is not limited to students. Others are coming to Christ too, and we don't care. We're happy about that. But God is doing amazing things in the lives of people as the gospel goes forth. Why does it matter? Well, the obvious answer to that is because people matter. The scriptures make it clear we've been made in the image of God, and God loved us so much, he sent his son in order that we might have a relationship with him. So it's a stated, demonstrated declaration by the God of the universe that people are highly valuable. They matter. Those aren't just numbers. They're people. And secondly, as Della said this morning, every generation is called to help fulfill the Great Commission. Jesus said, all authority in heaven and earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all the nations. That's in Matthew 28. And so another reason we're here today is because the generations that have preceded us were faithful in taking that gospel out. And so it's every generation's chance to be a part of that. This is our time. One of the things that strikes me as I think about being with Cru for 44 years is I don't have a lot left. I really don't. But I want them to count more than ever in my life, because this is the chance that I can make a difference. When I get into eternity, my opportunity ends, as does yours. And so now is the time that God has called us to participate in what he's called us to do. How do you spin Win, Build, Send Up so it goes globally? Well, first thing I have to say is you can't just spin it up, because it is a serious God thing in order for something like this to go global. And so the first thing that you need is him. You need his presence and you need his power. We need to know that it's him that's giving our plans to us, that's guiding us. That we need to spend our time asking the question, God, where are you working, and how can we be a part of what you're already doing? God, the Great Commission is God's idea, not ours. He's actively involved in it all the time. What we need to do is figure out how he's involved and how we can be a part of that, how he wants us to fit in. And so we need his power and we need his leading. Secondly, we need fruitful people. Cru has about 4,600 full and part-time staff in the United States. When I say Cru, I mean the campus ministry of Cru, our segment of it. 4,600 full and part-time staff in the United States and abroad, and another 25,000 volunteers. And all of those staff, by the way, have raised their own salaries. And let me again say to you that I would venture to say that probably, with rare exception, everyone in this room is involved in supporting a staff member and mobilizing that workforce. Sometimes when I think about my job, I'm so humbled, because I think this is a huge Great Commission workforce. This is a huge Great Commission workforce that God has called us to steward. Oh, Lord, help me to do it well. I don't do it alone, but I do it with my teammates. And we need to do that well. It's massively huge, and it's there because God has provided their support. Thank you. Thank you for the staff that you invest in and make available to us as we continue to move forward. We need fruitful people. They need skills and expertise. Sometimes it's strategy. Sometimes it's finances. Sometimes it's just encouragement. Sometimes people just get a little beat down and they need the pep. And we need to help them in every way that we can. Then we need an effective platform. And what I mean by that is the strategic infrastructure to leverage all of that human capital that God has given us. We need to be innovative. I remember last night when Tim was talking about a senior looking at a freshman, marveling at how different they were because of how quickly things are changing. We have to keep up with that or we'll be irrelevant in a heartbeat. And so we need to be able to innovate, especially in the areas of technology. We need to provide mission-critical services to our staff and volunteers. We need digital resources. I've already told you about everystudent.com. 20 years ago, that was just an idea. We were one of the first to get out there with that kind of an idea. And over time, God has grown it well beyond what we ever would have imagined. But that's just one. We need other resources digitally. Then fourthly, we need like-minded, spirit-filled partners. Partners who give of their time, talent, and resources. If you look toward the very back of the picture, you'll see a photograph of some good friends. Vimal and Tabitha Patel, they're on our advisory board. They got involved in Crew as students. God changed their lives. They went, I believe it was on stint after they graduated. They met, they fell in love, they got married. They came on staff. They were on staff for quite some time. Vimal and I worked on the same team for a while. And then they felt God leading them into the marketplace. They've gone out to the marketplace, but they haven't left the mission. Not by a long shot. They bring so much to bear in all that we do. That's just one example of hundreds of thousands of partners like that, like you, that have joined us in our endeavor to try to reach students and faculty with the gospel. So with these resources that I've been sharing with you, we have our goals. Our goals over the next 3 years is that 225 million would hear the gospel. We feel like that's a faith step, but realistic based upon how we've seen God use the things that he has up to this point. We think that will lead to 3 million new believers. We want to trust him to have 35,000 engaged in evangelism. Win, build, send. Our strategies. And we're trusting the Lord for 1,500 new ministries, which of course goes back to the focus of our partnership with every campus. And so that's what we're trusting the Lord for. But the question will be is, what's the investment in? And if you look, you probably have already seen this. It's a little loose piece in the back of your book. I trust each of you have one of those. This is our Win, Build, Send strategy kind of fleshed out. You can see those 3 categories, and then you can see some tactics under each one of them. And I want to go through these briefly, but as you look across the page, you'll see the tactic listed under Win, Build, and Send, and then you'll see the outcomes that we expect based upon our experience over time, and then what we estimate it to cost. And all of that, of course, added together is what brings us to our budget line for this next 12 months of ministry. This sheet just represents year 1 in our 3-year plan. So the first one is spiritual conversation tools. You already saw this. You've got one on your desk. We redo these all the time just to make sure they're relevant. But here's one I would have loved to put on your tables, but I couldn't. It's called Solarium, S-O-U-L, Solarium. And it's filled with a bunch of photographs. I don't know if you can see that or not. But they're photographs. And so how this works, just to show you how a spiritual conversation tool flies, is you can sit down with a student like I did at a college in Illinois, and I spread them out on the table, and I said, which one of those pictures best represents your life? And he picked one that was a cyclone fence with circled barbed wire on the top of it. And I asked him why, and he said his uncle just got put in prison, and it was really shaking his life. And then you can lay the cards out and ask him the second question. Which one would you like to have represent your life? And so they pick out a card or 2, and they point to that one. And you might ask them something like, well, how do you think you'll get there? And you have a conversation. And then you can simply say, do you feel comfortable with me sharing with you my dreams and how I feel like I can get there? And they usually say, sure, because you've listened and built rapport and got a conversation going. That's the whole point of it. You share the gospel. And so the idea is spiritual conversation tools make evangelism easy. I've been sharing my faith for years, but it can still really make me sweat. There's lots of times I'll find myself in places and go, why am I afraid? I think part of it's just the spiritual battle, but having the right questions to ask, the tools to use, really helps in mobilizing people in that really strategic activity. So those are our evangelism tools category. Then there's freshman outreach. Think of Brian at NYU and the I Am New home page. Think of freshman survival kits. We haven't thought about those. Imagine a laundry bag. In the laundry bag is a ball, some coupons for food, maybe a copy of the New Testament, a gospel tract, information on crew, some music. And a freshman walks in, we give them the bag, they sign up for a meeting, and then we use that opportunity to share the gospel. So it's a giveaway that builds a relationship, opening up the opportunity to be able to share Christ. Or sometimes it can just be a pizza. You know, I mean, if you want to get students gathered, just bring in some pizzas. Boom, you're done. I call it the modern day loaves and fishes strategy. But, you know, if you feed people, they're really happy. Then you've got evangelistic forums, like Veritas forums, bring in scholars who hold a Christian worldview and debate scholars on campus. Digital outreach includes things like SCOM or College Bound, which is a brand new strategy that we're using to reach out to freshmen before they ever get on campus, so we can build that relationship with them in advance. Then think of fall retreats like Jane from China. We want to make it easy for students to go, so we want to reduce the cost of those events. Winter conferences, I've already explained those. Those can be expensive events that we want to get more students to, and so we like to provide scholarships there. Spring break. Florida is a party zone during spring break, serious party zone. It's nice to bring the gospel on the beach to a bunch of intoxicated people. That's another story I'll save for another time. Then under Send, there's our Every Campus partnership and launching new ministries. Short-term missions, think of Patrick in that coffee shop talking to Murat. We're hoping to be able to send 250 more Patricks to 50 brand new locations. And then there's the apprentice program, which is part of the high school ministry. 105 apprentices they're hoping to raise up to send to 21 cities and reach out to 63 high school campuses. And the final category is mission capacity, which has to do with infrastructure, critical services, and digital support. So what will it cost to execute our plan? Year one, as I said, it's about a $17 million plan. Year two, we anticipate it'll be around 17.5, year 18 for a total of 52.5 million. There's a couple things I want to clarify, though, as you think about this. About half of what we need here is raised by teams around the United States that are on campuses and communities. Some of you have probably attended these events. They're called vision dinners or fellowship dinners. You go to a hotel, you have a meal, and they share their vision for the campus, and people invest. About half of our budget is raised locally by those teams. We want, as an executive team, to raise the other half and help them out. So we're trusting God for $8 million this year to finish out this budget. And that's what we're putting before you all today as you consider this. Secondly, is a thing to keep in mind is just the impact of COVID. So many of those dinners I described were canceled last year. And so consequently, a lot of that development didn't take place. The last thing I want to say about this is in reference to the fact that our staff are already supported because they've raised their own finances. And so our expansion plan goes to strategy, not a lot of overhead, not a lot of salaries, but it goes directly into these win, build, send categories. So in light of that, I want to say thank you again for supporting our staff. And in fact, as you consider your giving, consider if the Lord will want you to increase your giving to any of them. Because they're really the spine of what we do.
Thank you so much, Bob. I loved hearing all of the plans and all of the ways we can get involved to just expand the mission of what the Lord is doing all over the world. I get so excited about really challenging even myself. Lord, what are the new ways you want me to participate in the Great Commission? Now, as you've listened to Bob, if you want to hear more from him, he'll be available during the Q&A right after this session, and you can come join. So if this message has resonated with you and you're interested in being part of Cru's expansion plan, check out the links below. We've prepared a lot of great resources for you as you pray about partnering with us. Okay, next up is something really exciting. We have our Executive Director of U.S. Campus Ministry, Shannon Compere, and she's going to be joined by Scott Beck, and they're going to dive into his story and his Cru donor testimony, the way that he's partnered with this organization. Scott is the former COO and Vice Chairman of Blockbuster and Chairman and CEO of Boston Market and founding investor and board member of Ancestry.com. He is a partner and investor in over 50 tech companies. But in the midst of all that success, Cru's mission is really what has been near and dear to Scott's heart. Let's listen in to learn why. Welcome, Shannon and Scott.
Hello, Shannon.
Hey, Scott.
How you doing?
I'm good. So Scott is an entrepreneur.
We're both wearing black.
I know. I think
This is great.
you got my message then.
I know, but your shoes are like
I
way
know.
cooler than mine.
Mine are way cooler than yours. Yeah.
doubt.
I have to admit that.
Yeah, no doubt.
Scott, you're quite the entrepreneur.
Yeah, I've been doing that for a while.
Yes, you have. You're quite the entrepreneur. You love Jesus. You're highly involved. So we've known each other for a while.
Yep.
You have an interesting background, done a great job, I think, of building your businesses as well as being involved in ministry, in the mission. So I'd love for you just to tell them just a bit of your background to kind of fill that in for them.
Sure, thanks. You know, it is an integrated life.
Yes.
You know, the idea of how do we not compartmentalize our lives but have an integrated life. You know, our story starts, way back, but the most important thing that's happened in my life happened when I was 14 years old. I walked into my high school cafeteria and saw this really cute girl who's sitting right over there, whose name is Teresa.
Yes.
And at 14, I had the opportunity to meet her, and I started dating her. That was 1972. She started dating me in 1977. But I mean that's foundational. We have four great daughters. In June 1st, 1953, my dad borrowed $5,000 from his dad, and he bought a garbage truck. It wasn't really much of a garbage truck. It was really like a dump truck because he used to have to grab the cans and walk up a ladder and dump garbage in. So I come from a background of entrepreneurs, and he had the good fortune of being able to merge that together with a couple other guys in 1968. They created a company called Waste Management, and
I think they know what that is.
yeah, it's a big garbage company. But really, it looks like I've done a lot of different things in my career, but we've really only done one thing. And that is, and it's what my dad did. We built infrastructures to be able to let entrepreneurs scale and thrive in their businesses. And they did that in the garbage business, and they did that and we did that in the video business, we did that in the bagel business, and as we went along, we intersected Cru, and I'll maybe talk about that a little bit later in terms of how that happened. But then ultimately, that's the whole thing that we've been doing. We've been building infrastructures to be able to help entrepreneurs scale and thrive in the businesses that they're in. And so when we intersected Cru and we intersected Family Life in particular, but also Eshelman and the Jesus Film Project way back when, and the campus ministry, we would show up and we would say, hey, how can we, maybe use some of our talents and some of our capital to be able to likewise help you scale. And it was early on with Family Life. We helped them, pull out some old AS 400 computers and network into the PCs and and that was back, who knows, back in the early 90s. And so we've just been on this journey of building businesses and then also helping to build ministry. And it's not, I don't believe in dualism. I believe that we are integrated and that, we need to integrate our lives, integrate our family lives, and integrate our business lives, and integrate our ministry lives. So we've been super blessed in that. 2010, Teresa and I decided that we want, God willing, we maybe had another 30 years left, that we wanted to be able to take our energy and our time and our experience and our capital and to be able to likewise do that same thing for the faith ecosystem. So we started a company called Gloo, Gloo. And in partnership with Cru and Compassion International and a lot of major churches and a lot of other organizations, we've been doing the same thing. We're working on trying to build infrastructures that can sit underneath the faith ecosystem and allow these courageous entrepreneurs, okay, these people that are against all odds are out there starting churches and doing campus ministry together, to be able to leverage some common infrastructures. Because the church is only going to be able to ultimately win in today's environment if it can release and realize the benefit of its collective might. The church and the Big C church and the ministries, they're under attack. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Big media is not coming to the rescue. Okay, big tech is not coming to the rescue. It's only by releasing the collective power that exists, the collective might, okay, allowing the body to be the body, that we really have a chance to take, in this moment, an enormous opportunity to have transformation across the world. And it is going to ultimately take that collective effort. So that's what we're doing. It's like I said, we really have only learned how to do one thing, and that's build some infrastructures to help these entrepreneurs scale what they're doing and thrive at what they're doing. So we're delighted to be here and be partners with Cru.
Is there, I'm amazed at how much you have worked with so many churches, major ministries. In particular, you're talking about kind of pulling this together. On the technology side, what are you excited about as it relates to what you're doing now with Gloo?
Can I stand up?
Yes, he's being held back by sitting.
Exactly. Not being able to answer questions sitting down is why I did fourth grade twice. Okay. So yeah, I mean, there is some super exciting stuff that's happening out there right now. In fact, if I were to look at what I think are some of the three largest, from a technology standpoint, things that are taking place from a collaborative standpoint, one is YouVersion. I don't know if you know YouVersion, but it's the Bible app. So a lot of you have this little Bible and that little Bible app right there. Well, that little Bible app, YouVersion, is now got over 480 million global downloads. Okay, and that's being done by a Life Church in Oklahoma City, and they've got not only 480 million. That's a big number. But then there's all sorts of every different crews putting Bible reading plans on there. Churches are putting Bible reading plans on there. It's a collective set of technologies that are now allowing, all of this interoperability to take place. So super excited. Bobby Grunwald is the head of that. The Green family out of Hobby Lobby have been great partners in that. So it's super exciting to see that. That's one of the things that's so encouraging. A second thing that's really encouraging out there is what's called Illuminations. And maybe there's people in this room that are part of that as well. And that's basically where all of the Bible translation organizations are coming together and collaborating on the Bible translations. So literally you've got, whether it's ABS or whether it's Biblica or whether it's the Seed Company or whether it's Wycliffe, all the different organizations are coming together, and they're using technology to be able to accelerate the translation of Bibles. They're not competing with each other on that. They're dividing and conquering, and instead of taking 30 years, they think in the next 10 to 12 years they can get that done. So that's the second one. But the third one, and one that I think is just unbelievably powerful is a thing called Every Campus. Every campus is, the history of every campus is unbelievable. You have to go back to the Lausanne Conference and then the Three Rivers Conferences where, Bill Bright and others are getting together and saying, wouldn't it be good? And wouldn't it be awesome if we could work together on campuses? Well, now InterVarsity and Cru got together, 5-6 years ago, and they started saying, okay, how do we bring together all the different ministries so that we can basically see who's on what campuses, how do we get student movements, Christ-centered, student-led movements on all those different campuses. So that's what they've done. So every campus has basically been able to build a set of infrastructures. Those infrastructures are powered by our company Glue. But what we do is we allow all of those 150 different organizations to push their data together, all in a compliant manner. We normalize it. We then show who's on what campuses, where do they have overlaps, what campuses are missing. There's over 4,300 and some campuses in the United States. More than 2,500 have no student ministry on it. So then what they said is like, okay, let's go attack these. Let's go see if we can get prayer walks on all those different campuses. So over 150 different organizations collaborating with data, seeing who's where, who's going where. They've prayer walked all of those campuses. So that prayer walking has been done. Now that's a big deal because all of those organizations are now connected, okay, in a collaborative environment. So now all of a sudden Cru is saying, hey, we have this great thing called MPDX. It actually helps our staff people keep track of their donors and do things with their donors. So now Cru's saying, all right, well, we've got that infrastructure already connected. We can take MPDX, plug it in, and bless the rest of those 150 different mission-sending organizations with those capabilities. So now you can start to get the economy of scale. You can start to allow the church to realize the power of its collective might. And without Cru, without the scale that you have, without the heart that you have, those things wouldn't be happening. That's one of the most leveraged things that's taking place in the world today. And the donors here and the partners at Cru are one of the reasons why.
Thanks, Scott. Yeah. And I love, yes, go ahead.
It's exciting. It's like, this is what it's going to take. It's going to take stuff like this. Everybody can't be just doing their own thing in their own silos. No, the church is under attack, okay? We need to get the collective might of the church.
And that is what I love about it, even as I've been with some of our parachurch partners as well, of just the power of us coming together and doing that, and you lending your expertise in that with what you know to do has been so valuable for us. Because you have been a ministry partner with us for quite a while now, in very significant ways, I'd love for you just to share with us, how do you and Teresa think about those investments? And how do you decide where are you going to invest your time, your resources, your expertise, your money? How do you think about that?
Yeah, and we have, we've been blessed in so many different ways, and we have been on the journey with Cru for a long time. But, it's heart. You have to have a connection, a heart connection. But then, we look for leverage. I mean, I'm just like, I love scale. I've been around scale my whole life, and I love to be able to see scale. So I'm looking for that and for collective impact. Now, when Teresa and I in 2010 decided that we wanted to, take these next 30 years and advance not only the business interests, but these missional interests within the context of Glue, we got a unique insight. Because we had gone through business, and we had ups, and we had downs, and we had tremendous successes, and we had some tremendous failures. And what became clear to us is that there was going to be no being able to avoid pain. We were going to have pain. There was not going to be the ability to avoid failure. We were going to have failure. We weren't going to be able to avoid disappointing others. We were going to fall short, and other people were going to be disappointed. We weren't going to be able to avoid any of these negative consequences. We really didn't have that as a choice. But the choice that we had was in pursuit of what? In pursuit of what were we going to fail? In pursuit of what were we going to have pain? In pursuit of what were we going to disappoint others? In pursuit of what? And in partnership with who? And so, when I look at, how we spend our time and our resources, we just can't think of a better partner than what Cru has been on so many different fronts, because it's in pursuit of the win, the build, and the send, and the simplicity, okay, and the clarity. Not just today, but this is now a third generation of leadership. Wonderful leadership. A third generation of leadership that you can trust to stay focused on the simplicity of that win, build, and send. And in partnership with who? Well, when we're partnering with Cru, we're not just partnering with Cru. We're partnering with those 150 other organizations in every campus. And I can tell you 10, 15, 20 additional opportunities and additional efforts and initiatives where Cru is taking the lead in making that collaborative. So we're looking for heart. We're looking for leverage. We're looking for collective impact. And we just can't think of a better partner, quite frankly, than Cru and what Cru has been.
Well, you've been a fabulous partner to us as well, you and Teresa, so we are very grateful for that.
Can I take one more minute?
Sure.
September 1977. I'm walking across the campus, and a young guy intercepts me, and he says, "Hey, do you have a minute?" And he shares with me the 4 spiritual laws. And my life was changed. Fast forward, Wednesday, okay, 3 o'clock in the morning. I get up early. I'm going to Austin. I'm in Austin. We're there for America Praise launch with every campus and all the other ministries and Christ Together, and we're launching, praying for everybody in Austin by name, and every campus is right in the middle of that. And been up since 3. We're leaving. It's about 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. Jay from Pulse, this young guy with cool hair and frayed jeans, and Dan Allen, who's your head of partnerships. Those guys are like, "Hey, let's go up to Baylor. There's an event up there." And I'm like, "Man, I've been up since 3 o'clock in the morning. How far is Baylor?" "Oh, it's only 2 hours, And I'm like, okay. So I jump in the car with those guys because on the way out, Dan says, "Hey, you only live once." So I'm like, okay, all right, I only live once. So we go up there. 2 hours later, we're standing on a football field with thousands of kids listening to the presentation of the gospel. And it's, if you want to make a decision for Christ, go to the right. And if you want to give your life and go to a foreign country, go to the back corner. And if you want to serve on this campus, go over here. And we're watching this, and we're watching this young man, another young man sharing Christ, and another woman, and another young woman, sharing Christ and making that thing. And Dan says to me, he says, "Man, isn't this what it's all about?" Mm-hmm. And I'm like, "Yeah." And then I thought, yeah, in pursuit of this and in partnership with these. Step up. Let's all step up. Let's all do everything that we can possibly do to advance these ministries and these missions. We need it. It's now or never. The time has never been more critical. Thanks for you. Thanks for Cru. And thanks, and God bless all of you.
Scott, thank you.
Thank you, Shannon and Scott, for your passion. I just love hearing the way that the Lord has gripped Scott's heart and just his conviction about how to use his resources to advance the Great Commission. It's amazing to hear that testimony and how God has worked through Scott's investment and his talent and his faithful giving. Well, now let's welcome Bob Francis back to the stage. Bob is going to help us meditate on what God is asking us to do in response to the things we've heard during these last 2 nights. What an important time to consider what God would have us do. Let's welcome Bob back.
As a young man, Barbara and I were newly married, and I had already started my career in graphic arts, and God was changing our life because we got involved in the ministry with Cru at a small little state college in the East San Francisco Bay Area. And we were challenged to consider giving our lives to the Great Commission full-time vocationally. I loved what Della said this morning when he says, not everybody's called to do the same thing, but everybody's called. I think that's really profound and really true. But we were wrestling with the question of, is God calling us into this vocationally? I was terrified. I had just given my life to Christ. Well, that was 1977. I'd given my life to Christ just 4 years earlier. And I didn't really know that much, and I had a pretty checkered past. I haven't really told you about that, but Barbara and I met smoking pot. Right, honey? Worked out pretty good for me. Anyway, once we came to Christ and our heads cleared, everything changed. Everything changed for us. And the question of in pursuit of what was just right in front of my face. And, well, we decided to join staff. And as mentioned this morning, that was 44 years ago. I have this little spot in my family room. I'm an early riser for some reason. I think part of it is because that's just when it's quiet and I can meet with the Lord. And I've known the Lord now for quite some time and been doing this for some time. And I find myself frequently marveling that I still am. Not marveling at myself, but Him. Because He's just led us all the way along, just as He leads you. And as we've heard these stories that we've been exposed to, some of them on video and others just as they've been relayed in different contexts, I just sit and I'm reminded of how real our Lord is in our life. We can sit here and talk about a relationship with God and totally get it with one another. It's automatic. A lot of us don't even really know each other that much, but we share this common experience and we share this common cause that God's called us to do together. And so that's what it's all about. I'm going to look up something here on my YouVersion on my Bible. Do you have that? I use it all the time. And this is just such a meaningful passage of Scripture that I want to share with you. And it's the Apostle Paul said it in 2 Corinthians chapter 5. He said, "Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he's a new creation. The old has passed away. Behold, the new has come. And all of this is from God, who, through Christ, reconciled us to Himself and gave us the ministry of reconciliation." He reconciled us to Himself. He did that. And now He's given us the ministry of reconciliation. That is, in Christ, God was reconciling the world to Himself, not counting their trespasses against them, and entrusting to us the message of reconciliation. Therefore, this is what he said, consider us ambassadors for Christ. What a privilege it is to be an ambassador for Christ. Wouldn't it be an honor if anybody was an ambassador for a great nation? What an honor. Well, we're ambassadors for our great King, God, making His appeal through us. We implore you on behalf of Christ, be reconciled to God. But listen to this. For our sake, He made Him to be sin, who knew no sin, so that in Him we might become the righteousness of God. God gave to us what He had so that we could gain that which we deeply needed. And that's what he's done on our behalf. And we have this incredible privilege to be a part of it. And so I trust that this afternoon you've had a chance to ponder how the Lord may want you to participate with us in our expansion plan, as we shared earlier this morning. Our 3-year plan, the executive summary that kind of lays out our simple strategy of winning, building, sending, and the kind of things that we do in those areas in order to move forward. And that perhaps the Lord has led you in some way. But generosity begins with Him. That's what we just saw from 2 Corinthians 5. We're generous because He can be generous. I will take just a moment to again walk through the card, and then I want to take a moment to pray and then just give you some time quietly to respond. Again, at the top of the box, there's 2 boxes. The first box allows you to use your gift to allow us to invest it in the way that we feel is most strategic relative to the plan. The plan is what we do. This just allows us to be able to invest it to the greatest need. The second box gives you the opportunity to be able to identify any specific part of that plan or strategy where you want to invest. So that's how you handle those. Check a box for the amount that you'd like to give, or select the one where you can fill in the amount that you feel like the Lord has led you to commit. And then after that, there is another place where you can indicate when you'd like to give it. Do you want to do that in 2021, 22, 23? It's up to you, however the Lord wants you to do that. And then again, the section on your card that's labeled "In Addition," you can allow us to use your gift as a match, which again provides a great incentive for others to join us in the plan. Let us know, if you would, if you've decided to include the campus ministry in your estate plan. Some of you were here this afternoon and learned a little bit about unique ways to give through Katie. Let us know if you would like to meet with her or someone regarding any kind of planned giving that you have in mind, as well as if you need information on tax-wise opportunities. Then finally, at the end, enter your name, address, contact information so we know how to contact you. So let me take a moment to pray, and then I'm going to give you some time, and we'll just have some quiet here, and you can respond. Lord, thank you for this great reminder. Lord, I've been at this myself for a while, but I sit and I listen and I say, oh my, Lord, what a privilege to have the kind of purpose in life that you've given us to be your ambassadors, to engage the world with the good news of Jesus Christ. And Lord, our lives have been changed because of you, not only today, but for eternity. And so we thank you for that. Lord, use us to spread this most significant message of all time to the whole world. So Lord, I pray you'd lead each of us in just the way that you'd like us to respond tonight. And I thank you in Jesus' name.
You know, I love that word generosity. I love thinking of what that word means as I think about the very first story we heard with Hannah and Susie, and just how generous God was with me to send a Hannah into my life when I first discovered Cru at the University of Michigan as a graduate student. I just cannot believe the lengths that God has gone to reconcile us to himself through Jesus. So thank you, Bob, and thank you to all of our wonderful speakers throughout these 2 nights to connect us more deeply with Jesus. And we want to thank you for tuning in and really taking part in this Cru Digital Summit. If God is moving you to give generously of your talents or your wealth, we would invite you to partner with Cru, and you can do 2 things. First, please continue to pray for this ministry and for the students and the staff. Also, check out the resources we provided below. There are a number of ways to get involved, and we'd love to have you join in this ministry. Finally, don't forget the live Q&A after this session ends. Shannon and Bob will be available to field all of your questions and talk more about Cru's mission, so stick around. Finally, we want to thank you for making the time to tune in to Cru's Digital Summit. Thank you for taking part in these last 2 nights. And if God is moving you to give generously of your talents or wealth and you want to partner with Cru, you can do 2 things. First, pray for the ministry. Pray for the students and the faculty, the graduate students, and the staff we're called to reach. Second, check out the resources that we've provided below. There are a number of ways to get involved, and we'd love to have you join this ministry and partner with us. Well, welcome everyone. What a wonderful evening it has been. I just loved, as Bob was praying that last prayer, about just the privilege of being an ambassador. And I just got chills, just being so grateful to the Lord that he rescued me, and what it means to just have the privilege of being part of Cru and being partners with you to seek and save the lost. So welcome to our live Q&A. If you're joining us for the first time tonight, we're with Shannon, Shannon Compere, who is our executive director of the U.S. Campus Ministry, and we're with Bob Francis, who is our executive director of development. So this is our Q&A time. You're welcome to put questions in the chat, and we have someone who will send them to us, and we have some questions we'll answer from last night, and we have a few new questions for tonight. So we'll get started right away. The first is, by the way, thank you, Bob and Shannon, for being with us. It's so fun to spend a Friday night with you. I wish we were all together, but this is second best. So it's good to see you all. This one's for you, Bob. And the question is this. It's really simple. Can you remind us, how can we be involved? Just remind us, for those joining, those people who are just ready to go, could you talk us through one more time? How can we be involved?
Yeah, well, there are several ways, but primarily what I'd like to talk about is what I just finished talking about in the video, and that is investing in our expansion plan. You know, our strategy, as noted, is win, build, send. It's sharing Christ. It's building them, those who trust Christ, into disciples, and mobilizing them to the world to do the same thing. And so that plan contains that strategy and tactics for each of those 3 areas that really help us to move forward into the world of students and faculty. And we, as I mentioned last night, we've never closed our ministries down for a year, our on-site ministry, and we're starting back up really this summer as hundreds of students go on mission, but they'll come back. And many campuses, I suspect, will be open and we'll come back, and we just, we want to be ready. And so funding our plan is really critical. You might have noticed that I was explaining how to fill out a card to the guests at the event. Of course, we didn't have cards in front of us, but we have put together a form that essentially is the same, has the same categories that we'd like to invite you to use as you consider investing financially. It's easy to find. I'm going to tell you how to find it, but I don't want you to go there immediately. There's a link on the YouTube description. On the bottom of your screen, you'll probably see a little label that says scroll for details. That'll show up if you wave your cursor over your screen. It'll say scroll for details. And then below that, you'll see a link that says mysummitresponse.com. And that will take you to a form you can fill out and indicate your response. But don't click on it now, because it will take you out and we'll be gone forever, at least in the next few minutes, for the next few minutes. So that would be something you'd do at the end of the broadcast. But that's a way that you can engage, and how you can specifically do it through that response device.
Thank you, Bob. By the way, I do know some inside information. Penn State will be open and ready to go. You're right. Cru did not shut down all year, and we're going to be ready to start in the fall afresh. Everyone will be on campus, and I don't know. I'm excited. I taught my last 2 classes today. We will be in masks in the fall, but I'm ready to go. So you're absolutely right. Thank you for all that information. That is really clear. And especially the part about not clicking out to go to the My Summit response. You can do that after our live Q&A. That does bring us to the next question that I'm really excited about, because this is a question I've actually been thinking about all year as I thought about my practices and kind of this new digital landscape of digital ministry. So the question is for you, Shannon, now that we've spent a year doing digital ministry virtually, what things has Cru done that you think will kind of keep doing? You know, what is going to be natural after the pandemic? And I think people listening are like, yes, I want to know this answer, because all of us have practiced things that maybe will continue. What do you think, Shannon?
Yes, I've been talking to a lot of staff recently, and they're just like, okay, I've got to kind of rethink fall in a new way. Kind of the programs or events that we've relied on over the years, this year has pushed us in a whole new way, in a really good way. This is where I think God can push us, and what comes out of it as we're willing to kind of go, okay, God, what do you have for us? Innovation, creativity. And so I love what's been happening on our campuses, even though it's been virtual for a lot of it. We've just seen some really neat things happen. So for example, we have a professor who spoke at a faculty conference. And what happened was, it didn't just have to be the people on his campus. They opened it up virtually, and actually several people, even in Guatemala, joined in, and they had over 4,200 professors that logged into that. And so you kind of sit and go, okay, what have we learned from that? What can we do moving forward? And so how do we kind of bring this hybrid together? Because it's a little bit of what I talked about last night. It's so good that we have face-to-face, but this digital is really effective too. So how do you take the strengths of both and bring them together? So as I've talked to our staff, they're like, Instagram gets us in front of freshmen instantly. And we are polling freshmen really by hundreds. And I'm not kidding when I say that. And so then they can go into the face-to-face conversations with them, or they can start online, because students may be a little hesitant. I don't know you, so I'll start online with you. And then all of a sudden it can move into a face-to-face. And so I just think there's just a lot of different things like that. One of the videos we showed last night was of Hannah and Susie. And it was so sweet, because one of them sent the other a $5 Venmo to go get a coffee so they could each have a coffee while they met together over Zoom. And so, again, this is where I think students live, and our professors have been living in this as well, that they are going to continue to innovate and create into the digital space, and then making this hybrid in person as well. So I look forward to even what's going to happen. We've been seeing God do amazing things this year, but I think that's only going to expand in this next year. As we do, more and more campuses are saying they are going to be in person. So that's exciting for us.
So true. And one thing I've loved this year that I'm going to take into next year is just how Cru this year really made me an expert in digital strategy. I mean, a lot of my colleagues were amazed. They were like, Heather, how do you know how to do all of this stuff? I was like, well, the nonprofit I'm involved, I was like, I'm involved in Cru. They teach me everything. I mean, I was so prepared for my online courses. The English department was like, where are you getting this training? Why are you able to build community? I mean, Penn State sent around my virtual community building questions to every single branch campus. And I was like, well, really, it's just my training with Cru. So I'm going to carry a lot of those things over. And even today, my students were so eager. They said, okay, now that class is over, can we follow you on Instagram? Can we be in a group me? Are you on TikTok? I mean, I was like, oh, I know all about this because I'm involved with Cru. I knew everything going on. So these students, they're just in it. So were you going to say something else? Were you going to add something, Shannon? Are you on TikTok?
Well, I'm not on TikTok, but okay. But I have so many friends that are, so I kind of glance over at their, but I just think I I live by this. I just think of how many times I can pull up God tools
Yes.
and share the gospel. And if it's an international student, it's a lot of times I can pull up their language and share the gospel in their language, where they can read it in their language. I can't read it, unfortunately, but the English is there with their language as well. And so there's just,
yes,
we live by this. Students live on this. And so the more that we can give them what they need in order to do win, build, send, and the power of the Holy Spirit on this, I just think it makes us more effective in what God's called us to.
Well, and they're so fast at it. I was with a grad student and I was so excited because she was really struggling. She was a believer, but nobody had done basic follow-up with her yet. And she's a superstar grad student. And I was going to do the Holy Spirit booklet with her. And I had never done it on God Tools before, the Satisfied booklet. So I was like, oh, there's this app. And I was like, it's called God Tools. And there's this little book. And she was like, got it. I'm there. She downloaded it, already had it ready to go. And we were able to go through a whole training in about 15 minutes on how she could be filled with the Holy Spirit. So, I mean, these things are going to continue. So that is just great. So speaking of students and kind of what they're going through, what's going on with them on the campuses, our next question is actually one from last night. So if you asked a question last night and you're wondering, why hasn't my question been answered? Now is a good time. So this question that was asked last night was, are you aware of the critical social justice ideology that is sweeping the U.S. campuses? And how are Cru staff and students being impacted by the social justice ideology? So Shannon, you first, and then maybe Bob add in.
Sure. I think we can both dive into this. So I'll get us started here. First, let me say, when it comes to social justice ideology, which is kind of a mouthful, it is definitely on our campuses. It is very prevalent on campuses. So what I want to start with and first say that what we are committed to in Cru, and that is we are committed to proclaiming what we are for. And it keeps the main thing the main thing. I just think about 2 Timothy 2. It's what Paul exhorted Timothy to do. And that's what we want to stay about, is keeping the main thing the main thing. And so Cru's mission and focus, it is in evangelism and discipleship. And so we are a missionary movement committed to our historic mission of helping fulfill the Great Commission by winning people to Christ, building them in their faith, and then sending them to reach and disciple others for Christ. And then, of course, Cru is Bible-centered. We really believe the Bible is our sole and final authority on all matters of life. And so Cru has been and remains committed to the historic truths of Christian theology as expressed in our statement of faith. And our statement of faith is something every staff has to sign every year. And so that comes up in January. Every staff is affirming and signing that every year. And then just, I think, thirdly, Cru embraces biblical oneness and diversity. So we embrace the Bible's command for radical, visible, Christ-exalting love among all believers. And it makes me think about John 17, that we want to have love one another and be unified so that the world would know who Christ is. And so we're also committed to becoming a missionary organization that empowers and sends followers of believers into every culture around the world and into every culture in the U.S., proclaiming the good news of Jesus. And so kind of how I picture it in my mind, can you imagine like walking on a campus, and that whether it's in the football field and you see the football players on their knees praying and just worshiping the Lord, or seeing pockets of students sharing their faith, or pockets of students praying, or in the Greek systems with sororities and fraternities to reaching international students. Just think about walking on a campus and seeing just the gospel going forth and seeing people praying, studying the Bible. Like we want to reach into every pocket on campus so that everyone would have the opportunity to say yes. And it's not just what we want to see happen here in the U.S. We want to see it happen all around the world. So Bob, that's that's who we want to stay true to who we are. But Bob, I'd love for you to share, there are realities on our campuses. And so, I'll let you take it a little bit more.
There certainly are. Well put, Shannon. Yeah, as you were mentioning this, I remember reading a quote from Dallas Willard. It's not exact, but it's close. He described the university as the fountainhead for our culture.
Mm-hmm.
And from universities, so much comes out that shapes our whole society. That's why we're there. And that's why we want to make sure students and faculty experience exactly what you're talking about, Shannon.
Mm-hmm.
There's no question that every college, probably, with rare exception, there are exceptions, but almost every college is steeped in an ideology called critical race theory. And it's kind of come to the forefront in recent times. More and more people are becoming aware of how it's kind of infiltrated not only campuses, but our whole society. And it's really aimed at addressing oppression and injustice. And, we, of course, would agree because our worldview holds to the fact that we live in a fallen world. So there's always been oppression and injustice. And I don't mean to trivialize that. It's been true of all time, of all people groups. But we have come to realize that critical race theory just includes some unbiblical approaches to how you solve that problem. They stand at odds with the gospel. We really believe the gospel is the foundation for every kind of change that we want to see in society, particularly those challenges that exist between people and groups of people. And so we don't endorse what has come out of those university contexts. But there's a problem, and that's that professors and administrators define critical race theory as the primary means to deal with racism and oppression. And so if you reject it, they see you as a perpetrator. They see you as endorsing racism and oppression, and you get labeled a hater. And an organization like ours would be kicked off campus in a heartbeat, to be honest. It's in a long list of topics that are very dicey, and we need to be very wise in terms of how we handle ourselves and talk about them. Shannon, I like how you put it when you talked about what we're for.
Mm-hmm.
What we're for is helping students and faculty understand how to know Christ personally. And that's our first foot. That's our second foot. And that's what we stand for. And so we don't make it our aim to speak into a lot of things that we're against, because it actually has a subversive effect upon what we really are trusting the Lord to do. So we don't want to alienate anyone. We just want to be able to come to them with the gospel. And we know that the gospel is rooted in truth. And because it is, and because the Holy Spirit is at work in the world and in people's lives, that when we share it, it has an impact. My wife and I were out to dinner just a couple of nights ago, and we got into a conversation with the server at our table, and she asked us some questions, and we told her how long we'd been married, which has been quite some time, and she just marveled. And we just said, well, don't think it's because of us. It's because we've built our life and marriage on the foundation of our relationship with Christ. That has been the game changer. And we had a chance to talk with her about the Lord. And I could just tell, not because there's anything special about us, but because we were speaking the gospel, we were speaking to her heart, and God was working. So we're confident that as we go forward with the gospel, that it is what God has called us to do, and it's what changes lives.
That's right. And Bob, is it true? I heard a rumor that you actually share the gospel so much in restaurants. Is it true that you and Barbara have had over 6 meals purchased for you recently by people who just want to buy you dinner?
That might be an exaggeration. We had a couple of free meals just in the last 5 or 6 weeks. It's just, we talk with people and they go, oh, let us buy your dinner.
So you feel kind of awkward, but you don't want to turn on their gratitude. But when this young lady walked away, I said, "Hey, Barbara, maybe we're going to get another free dinner tonight."
I'm telling you, I think it relates to the hunger that people are like, I want to talk with you so badly that I will literally buy you dinner. And that actually leads us to the next question, which is the hunger that we're seeing in the culture. Whenever I attend the summit, I always think, okay, what is unique about this year? Why is now the time to partner? Why is now the time to give? What's going to happen in the next year? And I'll tell you this, I have never before in all the 25 years I've been on campus have seen the spiritual hunger that I see now because of, and this is the question that was asked, what we're seeing about the mental health crisis on US campuses, at least, well, international campuses as well. We know there's an epidemic of loneliness. I mean, several countries have chosen, a minister of loneliness. There's epidemics of anxiety. I've never seen students have more, panic attacks in class, the number of students on medication for anxiety. So the question is, how is Cru uniquely positioned? How are they leaning into this mental health crisis? I can tell you from my own experience, one of the ways I could start off this question and then let Shannon answer is just how eager and willing the students are. If you begin to talk about anything that will promise well-being, they will listen and they will take notes on what you say because they're hurting so badly. So Shannon or Bob, how is Cru leaning into this crisis on the US campus?
The opportunity is there. I mean, this generation's known as the loneliest, most anxious, and then you put a pandemic in there and you just put the distance from people even greater with that and say, okay, go virtual. And yes, they live in the digital space, but God still made us to have a need for fellowship and community with people. And so I just, I keep sitting going, wow, what's it going to look like in the fall? Like, this is the opportunity. And what if God is using this loneliness and anxiety that they do feel, and this year has only put an exclamation point on it, that it opens even wider the doors for the gospel to go forth. Like I get so excited thinking about it hey, we actually have the answer to this loneliness and anxiety. And so I think about Cru's been doing these Cru study breaks. Hundreds of students are coming. I mean, you provide pizza or cookies, students are showing up, something free. They're showing up, but it's also this, we're meeting a felt need in their life. And as you get into conversations with them and they all of a sudden start opening up and start sharing, and it leads into this opportunity to telling them about Jesus and knowing Jesus in a personal way. And that is actually meeting the deepest need in their life. They're burnt out and they're willing to listen to anything, at all. So I think that's some of what we see. Heather, I would love for you just even to talk about the spiritual wellness and the opportunity that you've had.
Yes. Well, that's why I got so excited about this question that partners are asking, because the burnout and the stress was so bad this year that Penn State declared, they have these spiritual wellness days. Part of it was they had canceled spring breaks because they didn't want to spread COVID-19. So they said, oh, we'll just have these wellness days on campuses. Well, on the campus. Well, one of them was the spiritual wellness day. And the spiritual wellness day said, talk about religion, talk about your faith, talk about your spiritual rituals of wellness. Now, never before in all of my time teaching on a public university campus has someone given me that open door opportunity to say, talk to your students about religion, talk to them about God. So it was an amazing day. I'll never forget. I walked in on a Wednesday knowing that I had this open door. And I said to my students, your spiritual wellness day is tomorrow. The university wants us to talk about our spiritual rituals. And the one that the university suggested was meditation and doing yoga with your students, or they had these different things on Zoom that they could do. And I said, and I was so nervous, by the way, even though I do love evangelism, I write books on evangelism, I still need to trust the Holy Spirit every time. So I was nervous, and I said, God, give me the words to say for these students. So I said, my spiritual path, I said, I've identified as a Christian already, but I said, I just want you to know, I am a Jesus follower. And those are the words I used, I'm a Jesus follower. My spiritual pathway is the most important thing. And here's what I was trying to use the language of Penn State. These are my spiritual rituals. I talked about my prayer journal and reading my Bible every day. And it was so precious because students would say, well, I'm an atheist, but could you please put me in that prayer journal? They would just give me their prayer requests and be so open. And they just wanted to hear, okay, this is what my professor does. This is how she has spiritual wellness. So I don't know. I kept thinking, had I been them, can you imagine being a college student and having a professor say that? Like, I'm a Jesus follower. This is what I do. I mean, I think it would have just made me so happy as a college student if I could have heard that. So,
well, and Heather, I think you're highlighting why we reach the whole campus.
Yes.
We don't reach just the students. We're reaching the faculty as well,
yes.
because the impact that a faculty can have on their students is profound. And so we want professors to follow Jesus and be able to share that with their students as well.
Yes. I mean, in Faculty Commons, they train us how to identify ourselves as believers and how to end class well. So today I said a blessing over them as I ended. And so many of my students came up to me and they said, my parents have that blessing. It was the Irish blessing. And they said, my parents have that blessing in our home. And I could see the Holy Spirit drawing them back to the religion of their childhood, just by me, saying the Irish blessing. So I know I love that Cru is a whole campus ministry, and being part of working together with students, undergrad, grad, faculty, and even administrators has been so wonderful. Well, we have time for one more question, and this has been such a joy. Thank you all for giving your Friday night to us, and we just love being with you, and it feels so good to be in partnership in the gospel with you. So the last question we have is actually for you, Bob, and I love that we're asking this because this is the same question I had after I was listening to Scott, and we were all getting so excited about his passion and all the ways he invests not just his resources in terms of finances, but sort of everything else. So here's the question. I want to invest my finances, but I also want to do other things. Are there other things I can do, Bob?
Yes, there are. In fact, we've created a little acronym that we use when we think about as partners join us. It's called LIFE. LIFE represents labor, I is influence, F is finances, E is expertise, because we've discovered over time that those are really 4 critical ways that partners have made a difference. Scott's just one of many examples of people who've done both. So, labor really represents rolling up your sleeves and actually engaging in the mission, doing something. And there's all kinds of opportunities that are available for partners. Things like we call them executive and entrepreneurial forums would be one example. We do them domestically. We do something similar internationally. This is where we bring a small team, usually 2 or 3 executives or entrepreneurs onto a campus. They'll go into classrooms and speak about their business, reference the impact their faith has had in forming their business practices. They'll speak to a dinner for student leaders that have been invited to come and hear testimonies and hear the gospel and have a chance to receive Christ. They'll speak at the Cru weekly meeting. They'll meet with Cru leaders. It's really a fun experience for partners, and it's very life-changing for students. We do similar kinds of activities in international locations. So those would be 2. Another is we've had partners join us in briefings for the sending of our missionaries all around the world. We have an initial one in the fall and a mid-year around January, where one is sending them off, the other is bringing them together for encouragement. We've had partners join us in that. There's even things like a pilgrimage in Spain people can go on. You can help train new leaders. There's just way more than that. Let me just say, if you're interested in any of those kinds of opportunities, after the broadcast tonight, go back to your inbox and go to the email that you used for where you got the link to get into this broadcast, and just hit reply and say, I'm interested in opportunities for involvement, and someone will get back to you and help you to get a more comprehensive idea of what's out there. Then in the area of your influence, all of us have relationships, and bringing others into the mission has been a key role that many partners have played. Expertise, I think of recent meetings, Shannon, that you and I have sat in, where some of our partners that have just excelled in business have really helped us think through some of the problems that we're trying to solve in our own organization. And so we benefit from their expertise. And so, that is so vast amongst people that are involved with us. That would be another way you can be involved. And then finally, of course, is investing in our plan and helping us to get those pizza pies so that we can get the freshmen together and share the gospel with them. Is just another example of that. So that's just an overview. Again, just reply on the message in your inbox and let us know if you're interested in learning more about that. We'll follow through with you.
Thank you so much, Bob. And thank you to Shannon. This has been a wonderful evening, and it's been great to be with you all. And thank you just for sharing all of your wisdom with us, Bob and Shannon. Thank you for those of you watching, just for spending the evening with us, for your partnership. I wanted to remind you of the opportunity that we have next year at the Hotel del Coronado in California. We'll all be there. Let's all just commit now to go. In 2 weeks, the registration opens, and that is at, I think it's campussummit.org. And that will open in 2 weeks. And so we hope to see you all there. But in the meantime, may God bless you richly. And thank you again for the time that you have spent with us these last 2 nights. And we hope to see you next year. Good night.